Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please sit down. Thank you. It's on. That's all the sitting you're going to get. We'll get you a second one, just a second.
So for the Q&A,
I don't need one.
so we're going to do it in this order: 3, 2, 1. Right? Do we want to just say? 30-second verse. Just right off the bat.
I like the Carol Smith suspense approach.
Yeah, I do too. All right.
I like that 3-2. And then when you say 2, that one's
Yeah, leave them on. Just when you're not talking, just do that. It'll be good.
Okay, pointing down at the ground, is it on their direction or is it somewhat directional?
There's a monitor around it, so down the crowd is good too. But if you walk in front of that speaker, not quite that. He has the one red on camera. Good.
All right, we're going to start the design review here in just a second. So if you could have your seats and, you know, maybe taper off the conversations here shortly. It's darker in here than it normally is. At least darker in here than we want it to be. You know, congratulations to all you guys for surviving another lovely Michigan spring weekend. Lots of liquid sunshine for everyone to enjoy. It looks like it's starting to fire back up again here now. Anyways, let's get on with it here. So I will announce first our third place finisher in design. That car is Technical University of Graz. The things I'm going to talk about here are going to be kind of more of a theme, and that theme for the most part is going to be design validation, testing, and that kind of a thing. That's an aspect that a number of teams, particularly the newer, younger teams, tend to underemphasize, and it's an area that is very critical and very important to the vehicle development aspect of your car. So. With that, the TU Graz car, it is a 10-inch wheeled carbon monocoque with a single cylinder and obviously a rather advanced Aero Package. All of the cars here have some similarities, but one of the things that we want to make sure that you understand is that you do not have to have a carbon tub in order to make a design finals. You do not have to have a aerodynamics package. You do not have to have 4 cylinders or 2 cylinders or 3 cylinders or whatever number. There's no magic combination. There's really no reason why a team couldn't show up here. Well, maybe there's some reasons, but why I couldn't show up with some combinations. So please, as you're looking at these cars, as you're listening to us talk, the takeaway should not be these are the aspects or the attributes that we expect to see in terms of content. What we expect to see is a well integrated and well thought out design that's been tested, proven, developed, and ultimately just well executed overall. So if you see similarities, some of those are similar for a good reason, but they are not requirements in order to get in this tent. So a couple of items here about the TU Graz team, and these are comments that were made by a number of the design judges based on design finals results. As the judges are running around the design finals, in addition to assessing the cars, they're making some notes and trying to devise some feedback, some positive, some negative. Some positive feedback and then some criticisms, opportunities for teams to do better. With this particular team, one of the things that again we expect every team to do a decent job of is basically setting clear packaging objectives and then meeting those targets. One of the aspects that we provide is within the spec sheet is the center of gravity, percent front, percent CG height, and those kinds of numbers. Those are targets we put on the spec sheet for a very good reason, and that reason is that they have a very big impact on the vehicle dynamics of your vehicle. And if you set a target and then you don't hit it, how can you expect the system to perform as you expect it to or as you want it to? So we put those targets on there in part just because we want to know what your targets were, and in second, when you show up, we look at the weight stickers and we want to compare what you wrote down as you being your target versus what you showed up with, and hopefully there's some explanations as to why it's different, or if you hit your target, it meant you did a good job of following your design guidelines along the way. Another item worth pointing out, in this case, the overall cockpit itself, just the layout and whatnot, was excellent. Easily adjustable pedals, comfortable steering, good seat support. Again, it's designing everyone focuses on chassis kinematics. Everybody focuses on making good power, keeping the driver comfortable, and then putting them in a position where they can actually pilot the vehicle is very important and often underappreciated by the teams as they're going through design exercise. Another aspect that we liked was they actually tested their steering forces. Again, as you're doing the design work, everyone's picking their steering, their steering ratios. They're calculating pneumatic trail. They're figuring out what the forces are supposed to be. But then but rarely do they actually do some measurements to assess those and make sure that, again, did they hit their targets? Is the vehicle performing as it was specified to perform? And if not, you should figure out why. And if it is, you've just confirmed it, and you can just move on to bigger and better things. They had a pretty trick setup matrix. Basically, what that means is they knew what knobs they could turn, and they had known sensitivities for each one of those. So as they went to make a chassis change, not only did they have a good sense for what knob to turn, but they knew how much to turn it. It's very, very important not only to know what types of adjustment to make, but what's the correct amplitude on those. And it takes a fair bit of work. It takes some testing. It takes some analysis. But they did a really good job of developing that criteria for their car. So on a day like today, they had an idea for what to do. Then one aspect of that I'll kind of give as a little bit of a critique is that based on our assessments, it would appear as though the team, even though they had a wealth of data, and they were collecting good data, analyzing the data, doing a pretty decent job of pulling conclusions from the data, there was a tendency to trust the driver's impressions over that of the data. And it's important, you're collecting all this data, getting useful information. Yes, the driver should have a say, but at the same time, there's occasions when the data needs to speak as well, and the data needs to drive some decisions. So just as a reminder for everybody to make sure that you're balancing the inputs that you're getting and that you're able to utilize them to, again, best optimize the overall chassis to make it perform as you meant it to. Those are the items I've got for TU Grats, and now I'll hand it over to Steve for some additional comments. Oh, sorry.
So y'all happy to be here in Michigan and have been competing at Formula SAE this weekend? How many of you are even happy to be done with Michigan's crappy weather? There's a saying, form follows function, and I'll echo Tony's reply or response that these cars look similar, and they look similar for a reason. Form follows function. These cars have an extreme level of performance, and they all look very similar because they all have an extreme level of performance. Now, the TU Graz team achieved this performance with a single-cylinder engine, and they go to the trouble of modifying their engine, and they leave no stone unturned. So they're pushing the 510cc KTM single-cylinder engine. It runs about 15-to-1 compression, and it's naturally aspirated. It's got a pretty well-modified oiling system that they know will supply oil under all conditions. And they know this because they tested for it. They ran a simulation on it, and they validated the fact that their simulation works. And this is just one aspect of the engine system on this car that it's just one part of what goes into the whole turnkey system that makes this car perform. I've had the pleasure of watching this school submit a Formula SAE or Formula student car to these competitions worldwide for many years. And this team continues to excel at putting out a really great looking car and a great performing car. And the car that they turned out this year is no exception. Placing third at the Formula SAE competition in Michigan in design is no mean feat. It takes a lot of engineering skill to achieve this level, and this team should be pretty proud of that result. Some of the design judges' statements, one of the judges said that the students had a really good understanding of spark and combustion, which means they've got in-cylinder pressure monitoring that most teams can only kind of dream of because it's a pretty expensive solution, but this is the kind of thing that this team does, and they make pretty good use of the budget that they've got, and this is what they do. This is how they do it. The performance that they put on is it's just over the top as far as a Formula SAE car goes. They calculated and tested E85 as far as a points advantage goes. So when it all comes down to it, this car sitting in front of you is nothing more than a points gathering machine, and they understood that. And they looked to optimize everything that goes on the car from a points gathering standpoint. So everything on the car is optimized to gather points, and that's kind of the way you need to look at this project. And that's what they did. So congratulations to TU Graz. They turned out a really stellar effort. I'm very proud of it. You should be too. Thank you, TU Graz. Make sure we get it right. Now, the second place
car
in
Go ahead.
in design is University of Stuttgart. You're going to do this one first, and I'll do it second.
Yeah. All right, so University of Stuttgart. Just in case you're wondering there, we had to talk about how we were going to do that, and we still didn't quite get it right. But I have a tendency to say the wrong one, so I guess I'm forever banned from ever being an announcer on the Emmys. But at any rate, University of Stuttgart. One of the things that jumped out is top-notch tire validation program and understanding of stiffness and how stiffness impacts vehicle dynamics. These wonderful little round black mysterious balls of question marks are amazing things. You know, a number of people would say that the race tire, or actually any tire, is one of the most complex things that human beings have actually built and made. There's a lot of people that would just say, there's no way, that can't possibly be true. Well, those people have probably never done a whole lot of tire testing because they change by the day, they change by the load, they change by which way you point them. They like to change. If one thing is consistent, they change. But there's also some when you learn more about them, you can make them work. And so it's very important to do tire testing. It's very important to obviously, there's a wealth of data on the Tire Test Consortium, so a quick little plug for that. For the teams that are not already a part of that, that is an excellent way. It's as cheap a way as you can possibly get to acquiring tire data. I would almost venture to say if you have some facility that will give you tires and give you tire test data, it's still not going to be as fast and easy as cheap as your small investment on a Tire Test Consortium. There's a wealth of data there, and there's a whole mess of Formula SAE students out there talking about the data, how to look at the data, how to process it, how to analyze it, what to do with it. There's you gotta filter the good from the bad in terms of what's on the forums and whatnot on Reddit. But there's good data out there, and I would highly recommend spending some time to learn how to use it. Another aspect about this car that kind of tickled my heart a little bit is that. For their composite chassis, they actually used a couple different non-destructive test methods in order to look at to investigate the chassis structure and ensure that the layups were good, that the bonding was good, there were no voids and that kind of thing. So they used ultrasonic testing as well as some X-rays. With non-destructive test methods, there's always trade-offs. Some methods are good for some things and some methods are good for others. No methods really seems to be great for everything. So they appear to understand that, so they use a couple different methods to look for different characteristics. And when you're dealing with composites, the processing there is so process sensitive that unless you're doing some sort of non-destructive testing, well, I guess you can do destructive testing as well, but it means you build a lot more cars. The non-destructive testing is going to help you, find the areas, help you improve your processes, and then in a number of ways, you can very often fix voids and fix DLAMs and fix those kinds of things, but you can't fix them unless you know that they're there. So I highly recommend some looking into that. In addition, this is a type of a technology that's, for some reason, almost, in the aerospace industry, it's harder and harder to find people that know this stuff. There's going to be more and more of a demand for it. There's quite a bit of technology, being, advanced in these areas, and it's just damn useful, especially, again, as we go to more and more composite structures over time. Okay. They had a plan for today. They had a wet car setup. I know a number of teams did not, but they did. So when Michigan did what Michigan does, they knew what knobs to turn. They knew how to adjust the brakes, how to adjust the anti-roll bars, what knobs to turn for the traction control. These are pretty important things to do. It takes time, it takes effort, but again, if you're looking to put yourself on the top of the podium and plan for contingencies, these are the kinds of things that you actually need to put effort and time into doing. The team should be commended for that, and I know that the judges sure appreciated it. Next, the last thing that I'll mention, kind of along the lines of the validation and testing aspect, is that they chose to use aluminum brake rotors. And, for a good while, there were a number of teams, this is maybe going back to when I was a participant, when maybe some of you weren't even born yet. I shouldn't say that because it makes me feel old and sad. But anyways, a number of teams were running aluminum brake rotors, trying to say, hey, this aluminum is light, it's got high friction, that'll make a great brake rotor. And then they learned some pretty hard lessons in that you can't just substitute a cast iron disc for aluminum disc and expect everything to work well. Times have progressed. We've got new coatings developed, new pad materials, so the performance opportunities are there, but it takes testing to do it. And this team, they put their brake system on a brake dyno, and they use that to characterize the materials and to understand how they react and how they perform. And in the end, they ended up with a system that's very effective. Saves some mass, delivers the performance they need. And again, they did it the right way. Again, kudos to you guys. It was a good job.
Yeah, let me just clarify on the aluminum brake rotors. It's not a bare aluminum rotor. It's a ceramic coated aluminum rotor. So don't be getting any ideas that you should put aluminum rotors on your car. If you want to get a clarification, go collar any of the Stuttgart students afterwards and ask them what they put on their rotors and try and get an idea for it. It's an advanced coating, and they definitely put the legwork into making it work. Reducing rotating moment of inertia is a hell of a way to gain an advantage on the track, and it applies to anything that rotates on your car, from unsprung masses to powertrain masses. They understand this. They made it work to their advantage, and that's just one of the secrets to how this car goes fast. This car is powered by a Yamaha Rz Yzf 600 engine. It's still 599 cc's, so they haven't done anything to affect the displacement of it, but they definitely get the most power out of what they got as far as short block goes. It's highly modified as far as the head goes. It's flow. They know why they've got the flow that they've got. The exhaust is well tuned for the head intake combination they've got. They understand that restrictor, throttle body, intake, head, exhaust is one whole common package that works as a cohesive unit, and if you change one item, it affects the entire package. They get it, and it's a well-tuned system on this car. It works as one whole cohesive unit that delivers just seamless power. The judges were very impressed with the way that they did the simulation, then the dyno testing, then the validation on track to make sure that this powertrain delivers seamless power that puts this car into the the winning position that it arrives at. They really liked, some of the comments that the judges gave about this car was that they really liked the good exhaust simulation, followed by good dyno validation, followed by good on-track validation that backed up all the results. The students that the design judges talked to exhibited extremely good theory, math, and testing knowledge. So this team just kind of gets it. They go for the details, and it's the little details that add up to a complete knowledge package that gets this car to where it stands today. This team also understands how ignition timing influences torque. This is a very basic thing that a lot of students, you ask them this basic question, they don't get. Ignition timing truly does influence torque. Torque is what makes this whole thing go around. This is what pulls you off corners. It's not high RPM horsepower, it's torque. Ignition timing is what controls torque. They get this. They modified their ECU switch to handle extra functions. So they aren't afraid to modify stuff to get the most out of an off-the-shelf product. The one bad comment that they had to say was that they only found one calibration expert on the team. If you have a problem with that one student, comes up sick or misses a date or whatever, the team might run into problems. In-depth knowledge throughout the entire team would certainly be more helpful, but this team certainly seemed to have pretty good execution on a plan, that's for certain. They also have a custom oil sump and oil pump on this car. They have no problem with oil supply to this engine. It's a well-rounded package. The whole thing is packaged really well. It has good form and function, and like the other three cars that are the three design finalists here tonight, it just looks like a car I want to get in and drive. Yeah, I could make this car go fast, I got to tell you. Like the car from Austria, I've also watched the Stuttgart team over the past bunch of years, over 10 years. Stuttgart keeps coming to these competitions with just really great hardware. The team understands what they're doing, and they get the job done. They should be congratulated on a really great job tonight. Second place in design at Formula SAE Michigan. Thank you very much, Stuttgart.
All right, so I'll talk a little bit about our number one car in design, TU Munich. I owe you guys a little bit of an apology. I did mix up a couple of the line items here before, so maybe we gave Stuttgart a couple pieces of credit for a couple of things Munich team did, but something tells me that the Munich team was, or that the Stuttgart team had some of that anyways. So at any rate, we'll forge ahead. What I will do is I'll mention one thing about the Stuttgart car that I did not mention earlier that I should have, and this is a pretty simple thing. To be honest, I'm really embarrassed that it just didn't occur to me earlier. But when you think about what a chassis is supposed to do, what a structure is supposed to do, obviously it's going to be taking the loads, the inputs from, whether it's a control arm, whether it's a seat belt, whether it's an engine mount, whatever. Its role is to take those loads, ideally as stiffly as possible. One thing that they did what was kind of clever is, they, with a lot of the composite structures, we were still required to have a roll hoop in the structure. For most teams, that roll hoop is just a roll hoop. It is doing nothing else useful other than providing a structure to meet the rules requirements, and it's got the bolted attachments or bonded in or whatever. Again, it is to meet the intent of the rules. In the case of the Stuttgart car, they actually gave it another function. They basically made that a chassis pickup point, which again, when I heard that, it was like, that's brilliant, but how am I so stupid to not have thought of that? It's already there. It's already a hard point. Why would you not use it? And again, that kind of comes down to it's attention to details and just, thinking about what are the functions, taking things back down to, base physics and that kind of deal in order to, build something that's as optimized as it can be. So I just wanted to point that one thing out, and hopefully that kind of gets you guys thinking a little bit about just questioning some of the way things are typically done, because there are different ways of doing things, and if you can make one part do two jobs, awesome. Okay, back to TU Munich. Again, going back to the validation kind of topic, they did do a fair bit of force decel testing to validate their brake system. Again, this is something that few teams typically end up doing. They'll go out and they may run some laps and collect some data. Obviously, they're collecting lap data, but they're not specifically doing brake testing to understand the brake system and isolate that and its characteristics. So it's, again, this is an important aspect in order to make sure the system is doing its job to then help the whole vehicle. The next, little bit of a kind of a critique here in that they didn't appear to use data-driven metrics to verify driver consistency and performance. There's no question that the TU Munich drivers are good, very, very good, and you don't get that good without doing some testing and looking at some data. But in order to properly develop the vehicle, it's also very important to make sure you're getting consistent input data. This is why the automotive manufacturers are using a lot of steering robots and driving robots, so that their vehicle dynamics data is super consistent. So that they can truly measure the metrics that they're looking for. And as the details they're looking for get smaller and smaller and smaller, the little bits of variation that a human driver input can add, can basically add noise that kind of overrides the effect that you're looking for. So just some encouragement there to, on their list of, a million things that they're doing in order to produce a car at this level, add some performance metrics, driver metrics in order to, basically qualify how well, how good the lap was and that kind of thing, both for driver training as well as to ensure that the data you're getting in is good and consistent and that there aren't other factors at play. And then the last thing I'll note here about the TU Munich car is their phenomenal Aero Package. They took a very much a systems level approach to the design and the validation of this. One example of that is ride height sensitivity. Again, a lot of people spend a lot of time working on flow analysis or wind tunnel testing and whatever, and that's all good, but too many teams, I think, do it in a fixed position. They're not considering yaw effects, roll effects, pitch effects, and all that. It's very, very rare that you're driving perfectly straight. There's zero wind, and the only air that's traveling over the car is the air that you're producing. Likewise, on an autocross car, these cars spend a whole lot of time with a slip rate associated with them. So it's very, very rare that the air is hitting the vehicle squarely. So please consider all these aspects. And again, this is the kind of thing that ties into the suspension design as well. Do you have a car that's very insensitive to pitch and roll in terms of your airflow package? And if so, maybe get away with a softer suspension. If you have sensitivities, you need to understand what they are so you can provide the proper platform so that the suspension is supporting the vehicle in such a way that the aero can do its work. It kind of can go both ways, and it's up to you guys to figure out what the right spot to be in and to put it there. So on to Steve. Sorry.
You're looking at a 336-pound winged single-cylinder missile. This car has been put together by a team that is clearly focused on one mission. The team is cohesive. They understand project management. They clearly have a mission in mind. The car reflects that mission. The engine is a KTM, single-cylinder engine again, 510 cc's. It's a carbon tub with aerodynamics, 10-inch wheels and tires. It seems to be the new combination of parts that puts Formula teams in the winner's circle and in the Formula SAE competition. The team is really cohesive. I guess the cohesive is just the word to use here, because you don't arrive at first place in design without understanding your fellow team member and getting along and playing well with every one of them. If you disagree with a team member, that's fine, but you're not going to end up in first place in design if you do. It's okay to disagree with a team member, but you've got to very quickly get back on track and understand how to pull this package back together and arrive at a good engineering decision, and then test it, validate it, build it, and get it on and pull this whole package together. The judges were very impressed with this car. This car won by a pretty large margin. The judges definitely had this car down as their preferred winner tonight, or last night when we did our judging. It won by a pretty good margin. The students were marked down as having a really good general tuning knowledge on the car. They understand how to make this car go fast. So they tuned for various different conditions. Obviously, this weekend it paid dividends because you were thrown some adverse conditions, and then sometimes it happens in racing. You don't always get sunny skies and dry weather. Sometimes you get Michigan weather. They not only know how to make power with the engine, but they were throwing some rather odd questions last night having to do with thermal efficiency or fuel efficiency. As you all well know, we've got a fuel efficiency segment to this competition. The student that was in charge of this understood that leaner, higher compression and higher thermal efficiency equals a smaller radiator, and they made that work to their advantage, which meant a lower mass on the car. It's little details like this that sets this car apart from the rest of the competitors and makes it the design winner tonight. Again, they had a great understanding of the lubrication system on the car. And that's just some of the little details that make this car work. I like the car a lot. And just like the other two cars sitting in front of you, I've watched Munich come to this competition with really great cars for the last 10, 15 years. They've done a great job, and they did another really great job this weekend. Congratulations, TU Munich, first place winner in design, Formula SAE 2018. What we would like to do is open up questions to the audience. If you've got a question for any one of the team members here, speak up, and we're going to take your questions and direct them to the team members. And so come on, let's go. The team members will open up and tell you all their deepest, darkest secrets, all the best stuff that tells you how to go fast. How does Gratz do their in-cylinder combustion measurement? We are not Gratz.
Yeah, we have the possibility to use an AVL test bench for some weeks, and there we can use the AVL system to make our engine maps and everything another we want to have for this car.
Does that answer your question?
So you're just using your direct pressure signal coming in and on that modify your spark?
Here. Why don't you hand your mic to Bill? Next question is.
So you're just using the direct pressure signal from your combustion event to, in a map, look up for your spark then, to modify your spark retard or advance.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, let me answer it, actually.
Slowly and in German.
I'll actually answer the question more generically. How's that? So in-cylinder pressure measurements, there's many ways to do it. One of them is through the spark plug, another is to machine the cylinder head to put the deucer inside. And then what you do is you have a crank encoder, and you take the instantaneous angle and you start looking at your pressure traces from these deucers. And then from there you can start to watch the burn fractions, how much the pressure changes versus crank angle, where are you burning. And there tends to be different ways to think about this. One way is where have you burned 50% of the charge that you took in. So that's sort of like our 50% number, and that tends to normalize out for all engines to around 8 degrees, in my experience. So you use this to find your peak torque much more directly than having to do torque pulls on the dyno with different spark settings. You just can find this CA50 number and then calibrate that into your spark. So it's a much faster way, but you can do the same thing with torque pulls. Did that make sense? Okay. The next question was about the aluminum rotors from Stuttgart, if there's any tips and tricks, if you wanted to share that.
Who wants to answer from Stuttgart?
I didn't know we were going to throw it.
Okay, here's the brake expert from the Stuttgart team.
So, hello. Yeah, for the aluminum brake discs, if you want to use them too, you should have first a test dyno, and then maybe a partner like we had with the IFKB Uni Stuttgart, who has a little knowledge about the coding system, and then you ask them if you want to have a cooperation with them, and then you go on for some many tests. And maybe someday you will have encoding on your discs. So, yeah, that's what I would suggest.
What is the type of material that you have applied to the aluminum rotor?
It's titanium oxide.
Titanium oxide. And how thick is the coating?
So, I really don't know right now because I think the thickness. I think the thickness is something between 0.1 and 0.2 millimeters, but it depends on how long you code this. It's process dependent. Yeah.
I think it's worth noting that you can make aluminum rotors work uncoated. It's not a requirement. Like that's your design execution, but I've seen aluminum rotors work with no coating, with the right pad material, and really managing the contact pressures at the interface. So I think it's another example where it's a system, and the pad, the rotor, and the coating have to go together to work as a system. And so you can't just get his coating thickness, execute, and have it work. You have to engineer the whole system.
Yeah.
Okay, and what kind of special preparation do you have to do to the aluminum to get the titanium oxide to stick?
Okay. Yeah, first step is that we make laser cuts out of the aluminum plate.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, if you have questions, please tell one of us in the front so we can write them down and build up a little bit of a backlog. And we're also going to take some judge questions just to mix it up a bit.
All right, so this is a question. Okay. The first question here is for TU Munich. Basically, it's a question about the cohesiveness on the team that Steve mentioned. And basically, where the question lies is, what have they done in order to basically make the other team members want to learn about the systems that are not necessarily their specific system? And basically, so how do you, I guess, get them engaged and interested in all of the vehicle, so that when it comes time for them to do more systems related stuff, that they know not just their specific system, but they know enough about the other ones to speak intelligently about them and even if need be, defend them to the design judges.
All right, so do we tell them about the naked parties or not?
Yeah, we have some rituals, basically. So if you want to join the team, there are several things to do. No. First of all, I think it's very important that everybody wants to do or wants to join the team. So we don't get any credits or anything from our university for joining the team. So everybody is here for learning something. And of course we have, at the beginning of each season we have several team building weekends. We are driving through the Alps and having a nice time there. Of course, also designing the car there, but also doing other stuff, not just designing car and doing car stuff. And of course, in Bavaria there is a lot of beer, which helps to get the team together. Yeah. But I forgot our friends from Graz.
Now, I know from talking to this team that there's a lot of out-of-school activity that they do together, and it's a team-building exercise, and it really goes a long ways towards building friendship that lasts the rest of your life, and it really helps to build a strong team that makes a strong product. And it's a big part of their success.
I guess I got a couple of things that I'd like to add to that as well. That being that there's a number of schools here that, for them, this is a senior-only kind of a deal. Whether it's because they only get credit for it as a senior, or sometimes some schools only basically allow you to be on the Formula Car team as a senior. I guess I would really, really challenge that. I would challenge your school, challenge your professors, challenge, just because it's crap. If that's the case at your school, and if you want to send me an email and have me write a letter to your dean or whatever, I'd be more than happy to do it. In my opinion, this is an experience. There's no question, that if somebody only does this program for 1 year, that they're not going to learn a lot of stuff. There's no question about that. They are going to learn a lot of stuff. But there's also going to be a lot of things that it's almost unrealistic for them to be able to do the quality of job that they would need to do, starting from zero. You don't get one of these cars with people that know nothing, and then in 1 year, bam, you're here with a car that can do this. That just does not happen. What you need a progression. And you need to give people, give the underclassmen an opportunity to learn some of the foundational stuff. And I can guarantee, if you're taking, basic statics, and as a freshman or a sophomore, and you're helping out with one of these cars while you're doing it, while you're sitting there in the classroom, you're going to be drawing tube frames, in your head as the professor's up there talking about, links and trusses and whatnot. I mean, this is what makes the classroom make sense. This is what makes the classroom hit home. I don't know. I get really frustrated when I hear about teams that are, handcuffed by only being able to spend 1 year working on a project such as this. In addition to that, kind of like the parties and the time they spend together. These are the people that after you've built a Formula SAE car, you've been through a war with people. These are your friends for life. These are the good old days. I need, it's important that you guys remember that and you appreciate that as you're going, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you only got an hour of sleep last night. These are the good old days. These are the experiences that you're going to look back on pretty fondly. I can guarantee it. I promise you this. And all the more reason to spend 4 years or 5 years doing it, like I said, challenge your universities. Make sure that you get more time to do this. You'll get more out of it. You'll have a better car. You'll have tighter friendships. You're going to learn more in school, and there just isn't a downside, if you ask me. All right. All right. So we had.
I actually had one message come in from text message, one question. So the question was, are you guys using tire modifiers, doping for your tires during your test programs? We know it's illegal on site, but that was the question. Maybe just a thumbs up, thumbs down. All right, all three are responding no. Thank you for the question.
One of the previously asked questions was, this is a question for TU Munich. And I guess the question was pretty simple. Why not active aero?
Yeah, we tried to use active aero, but we had some issues with our one-cylinder engine and vibrations, so it broke. Yeah, very simple answer.
But I guess it confirms the importance of testing and validation and all that, because if you'd have shown up here and broken here, that would have been a very, very bad day.
I think we're good for time. It's been.
I'm sure Kaylee could use some more time from us. Keep going if you want.
It's up to you guys.
I'd say keep going.
All right, what's your question?
What is, and this is for any of the team captains, what is some advice you would give to about an average team who wants to develop a championship organization over time?
So the question was, for a team that's mid-pack wanting to move up, where would you, this is for the team captains, where would you focus your energies if you were a mid-team pack wanting to move up?
Okay, all my team members say beer. No, it's not true. We already talked about this topic. It's really a good question. I think. Shut up. Like the team membership, like the friendship you need to have in the team is super, super important. Also important is that all departments talk to each other in a clear way and like talk always to each other. And don't miss any points. Like that's, yeah, you will end in a lot of troubles afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's real solid advice, which is if you treat the competition as an opportunity to lose points, don't do that. Make sure your documents are submitted on time. Make sure you're just doing and following all the deadlines, because it's easier if you do it that way. We get a lot of points deductions just for missing the due dates. And then my personal recommendation would be for like kind of the mid-pack teams, it's look at the overall system. We tend to see silo optimization in those cars where the upright looks really nice, but the load paths into the frame aren't good from it. So if you focus on minimize your scope to success and execute really well at the system integration level, I think that is where I would put my energy. Thanks. And beer too, probably.
Got one over here.
Yeah, thank you. TU Graz and Uni Stuttgart, I've seen that you are using cable pulled throttle body. Could you explain why is that?
The question was why you decided to use a cable pull throttle body versus ETC or whatever else, I guess.
So actually for the next season, the ETC system is in development.
So I guess it comes down to timing for that one. Look forward in 1 year and we'll see it on here, hopefully.
Okay, we have a question for Stuttgart's Aero guy. He wants to know why they used end plates.
What's the principles behind your rear end plates, and why didn't you go with the design like Munich's with the slots?
We need a mic over there.
Where are they?
Well, I think the sleds are useful in downforce and drag, but the effort to develop it is pretty huge, so we decided to focus on other things.
Any other questions? One more.
While he's on his way over there, I think there might be kind of a little bit of a theme there with those last couple of questions, and that being that even the best teams can't do everything all at once. You know, they have to prioritize their resources, prioritize their time, develop things maybe on the side for implementation in the future years. So I mean, again, that's a lesson for some of the, you know, the newer, younger, smaller teams. That, you know, it's okay to spend a couple of years developing a technology and then put it on the car. You don't have to do it all at the same time.
Who's it for?
Munich. Hi there. I have a question from Munich. You mentioned that you modeled your ride height sensitivity and how it affected your performance. How do you take that data and make your car more drivable, make it less sensitive?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
You mentioned that you did tests on ride height sensitivity in regards to your downforce levels. How do you take that data to make your car more drivable and more predictable?
That's a hard question. That's going to be a difficult question.
That's a very good question, I would say. Yeah, we validated our ride height with ride height potentiometers and damper potentiometers, and therefore we could see how the ride height behaves over the track and corners and the whole course, and therefore we could develop some results we want to have for our car. So, for example, we can put in anti-dive options or anti-squat options at our car to get better performance out of our aerodynamics.
And one thing about the question, I think it was the question about how the average team can increase the performance. I think it's very important to have a good communication in the team, but also having good communication to your alumni, because they are the key for success. You really have to make sure that no knowledge is forgotten, and yeah, I think that's a big point.
Yeah, actually the next question was, how do you handle corporate memory, which is the knowledge transfer from year to year, if you had any tips for that?
Yeah, well, what we do is, or what our alumni do is that they come to our office, even if they're not in the team anymore. So they are, maybe it's a unique thing, but they are interested in the teams which are following. So they want to see that the team is getting better and better and increasing their design. So I think even if you're not in the team anymore, it's important that you kind of try to help the newbies and try to tell them a little bit about the stuff you learned and the fails you did.
I think after talking to many other teams, there's all, in addition to the human interaction, which is super important, is writing reports at the end of the year or along the way, doing design reviews that document your thought process and the finished product, as well as if you made any design trades to get there. So if you looked at fabricated uprights versus milled aluminum and you decided that year to do milled because you had a CNC machine you had access to, but the next year they lose that machine, but they still have the welder, they can say, oh, okay, maybe fabricated is a good solution. So I think if you show your work, do design reviews, and then write end of year reports, that tends to be a very traditional way to move knowledge from year to year.
We got time here for maybe just a couple more questions.
Yeah, the question was for Stuttgart. The person asking noted they had a 51% front bias on weight and was asking how that worked with their system overall.
We're getting kind of some blank stares here. Looking for Jan Lehman? It would appear as though we may not have the optimal person here in the audience to answer that question, unfortunately.
I think we can move on. How about one more?
There we go.
How much does all teams, how much does every vehicle cost? Actually, manufactured research cost? You want real cost? Yes. Not what they put on the paper. No, not their cost report, but their actual. But their actuals. Okay. For all three teams.
The question was what the actual cash budget was for each of the teams.
Okay, TU Munich, what is the actual beer budget for your team? Beer budget for your team.
Well, so in Hockenheim we had, what was our maximum? 1,200 liters.
1,200 liters of beer. TU Graz.
2500. Like
They can't remember.
it's like 10,000 beer during the season without the events.
Stuttgart.
So basically zero, because we were just taking beer from Graz.
Now, I can testify to this beer budget because I have been to Germany and Austria and seen it happen. So I would invite all of you to come to Germany and Austria and witness it for yourself because they share their beer. We're going to wrap this up.
All right, well, I really wanted to say thank you all for coming to Formula SAE. I think that it is an amazing experience, whether it's hot or cold and wet or dry. The engineering is constant, and your enthusiasm really comes through no matter what the weather. So thank you for that. Thank you for all three design finalists for your great, candid, transparent answers. I think that's really great and a good spirit of teamwork and wanting to further the whole event. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.